Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the official podcast for the Apostolate for Marital Intimacy. My name is Theo McManigal. I am the marketing associate here at the Apostolate for Marital Intimacy, and I am here with the founder, the boss, the CEO, the guy in charge, James Walther, and you all know him very well. So, James, how are you today?
I'm doing quite well, Theo. Thanks for getting this restarted and have me on as the first official guest.
That's right. That's right. We can decide if it's the first episode or the second episode, as anyone who's watching us on YouTube will be able to see that. But we're coming to you with a very special episode today. Not only are we kind of kicking things off here with the podcast, but the nature of this episode is also an appeal. And yes, those of you who are familiar with Catholic intimacy. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. We'll take the chance to remind you we've changed our name to the Apostolate for Marital Intimacy. We'll talk a little bit about how that came about. And right now, it's also important for you to know that we are a nonprofit, and so you'll find a link below. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and also please donate. We need some donations before the end of the month to keep this thing going. But first, let's just jump into today's episode. We're gonna get to know James a little bit, and then we're gonna kind of talk about how things have started and how things have progressed. So, James, please tell us a little bit about yourself. I'd love to know a little bit about your upbringing as well as your time. We know you're a former seminarian, as am I, and then and now you're married with Megan. You run the Apostolate for Marital Intimacy here. You're in the military. You impressive guy, impressive slate there. So tell us how this all came about.
So, for a little bit of background, I'm originally not from St. Louis, where we're currently headquartered. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm the oldest of seven children. We were all raised Catholic. My mom's a convert. Proudly the fourth in a line of of women who were born of some other faith and then converted to faith. So the men in my family now are 5-0 for converting our wives. And so raised Catholic, raised homeschooled actually, and was really torn in childhood between the military and the seminary. And my pastor is one who convinced me, said, well, you can always go join the military down the road, but don't give God second fruits. So if you think you might be called to the priesthood, you need to go do that first. And so I did. First joined the Fathers of Mercy in South Union, Kentucky, um, and was with them for 3 years. So I actually was in temporary vows. And once I was actually approved my second round of temporary vows. And about that time, I discerned out of the Fathers of Mercy and into the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest. So I joined them and I went to seminary, went and did a year of apostolate in Chicago at their Shrine of Christ the King. Then I went to Italy where I was stationed for 4 years at their international seminary. Spent a few months in their apostolate there in Florence as a year of assignment, and then transferred from there mid-year to help out in their school in Brussels, Belgium. And then the following year, I went to the apostolate in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And that's where I discerned out of the community with the help of my superiors and a lot of prayer and asking God's guidance, both for myself and my superiors, and a lot of very good conversations with them. Discerned it was not God's will for me to be there. And then with continued reflection with my spiritual director, discerned that I wasn't meant to go to seminary anywhere else, that my time at the Institute was where God had wanted me to be for that time. And then it was my vocation to go and discern marriage. 2 months later, I met Megan and at a Young Republicans Christmas party, and there in Nashville. And because I moved back to my home state after leaving seminary and rejoined the traditional community there. There's the Assumption Parish there in Nashville, and we started dating almost immediately and got married the following September. So September of 2001. And for the military, so as soon as I left seminary, I immediately started applying for the Marine Corps. And unfortunately, because all of my studies, my more advanced studies, have been in Europe, I didn't have the an American diploma. So
Mm.
even though when I returned, I went back to Holy Apostles, where I had actually done part of my undergrad for the Fathers of Mercy there, and took them my transcript and said, "What can we do?" Because I need an American degree, and they said, "We've done more than a master's, but we can't just hand you a degree, so you're gonna have to enter the master's program." Okay, so I started that, and then and then the Marine Corps said, "Well, we don't care if you have a master's degree; you need a bachelor's degree to be an officer." I was applying to be an officer. So then, ironically, I was doing undergrad and grad classes at the same time because I
Wow.
had to finish the bachelor's that I already started and get the master's because I was already most of the way through that. So ironically, I got an associate's degree because I was one CLEP test away from an associate's degree. I was like, why not? Got that a couple months after I restarted college. Um, about a year later, or 9 months after that, I got my bachelor's degree, and 3 months after I got my bachelor's, um, I defended my thesis and got my master's. So I was doing a lot all at the same time, and in the middle of all that, uh, getting married and moving states. Because after we got married, we decided to move to St. Louis, here to the community at St. Francis de Sales Oratory. I'd been stationed here for a summer as a seminarian. I knew the community, loved it quite a bit. And we had friends, other friends from seminary who actually, when they left, they also moved here to be part of this community. And so we realized it was a great opportunity for to start a family. And because Nashville has become so incredibly expensive with everyone and their cousin from California, New York moving there, no one from Tennessee can afford to live in Tennessee anymore. So St. Louis was a good opportunity for us. And so we got here, and the Marine Corps apparently decided I was too old because they kicked my application around for a couple of years. At this point, I guess I was in late 20s. And then a buddy of mine said, "Well, hey, the National Guard will take you, I'm sure." And so I put in my application to the Missouri Army National Guard. 28 days later, they I swore in um, as an officer candidate. Went to basic training, came back, and at this time, I was actually teaching for one of the charter schools here as an English teacher. Um, and so I did that training. Then I was preparing to go to OCS. I was doing the pre-OCS uh, National Guard style. So we'd go into OCS in chunks. And I realized that juggling um, a graduate program, because I was started a second master's at that point for marriage and family therapy, teaching full time and coaching and doing an officer candidate program, which is a part-time job in itself, was not very feasible. So I resigned from OCS and requested to be transferred to the medical corps. And so then I went and became a combat medic with the Army. And while I was in that program, I applied for a full-time position in the National Guard as a combat medic and got that. So that's what my day job is actually as a combat medic for the Missouri Army National Guard.
Wow, well, that's quite the very good, and thank you for your service. Also, thanks for your discernment too. I realize just slightly off script. How do you find that having been in seminary for so long? Do you find that it gave you some good preparation for being now married?
Oh, in so many ways. I mean, just looking at like marriage prep, right? So I was had finished everything but my diaconate year. So
Same
I
here.
left seminary and few
So
weeks
you were
later,
almost ordained a deacon?
yeah, so I left seminary and a few weeks later, uh, most of my classmates were ordained deacons. I had
Wow, a
not
few
been
weeks.
ordained
Okay.
with, I had not been ordained a subdeacon with the rest of my class. I received all of the minor orders through Acolyte, which I actually defended my thesis on the sacramentality of the minor
Mm-hmm.
orders. Um, but they were all ordained deacons a few weeks after I left. Um, so I'd already done the marriage prep courses, the canon law courses on marriage, all those things. And it was actually a bit humorous when I went to start marriage prep at our parish. Our pastor, who knew me, he knew the institute. He had the form there of your questionnaire for your canonical process for marriage. He goes, "Oh, you know how to fill this out," and just handed it to me.
Wow. Yeah.
And said, well, you already know how this goes. So I'm going to trust you to kind of take charge and lead your family. And uh, you tell me what you need. I was like, okay, Padre, sure. And so I did a lot of our own prep, marriage prep, which was actually and ironically very good for what I ended up doing with Catholic intimacy. Um, man, it was a huge blessing. Um, just that, if nothing else, a lot of people have asked me over the years, well, do you feel like you wasted 10 years of your life? No, if anything else, I had a 10-year long retreat, and I've
Mm.
never done a retreat that was a waste of time. Um, I'm by no means a saint, but uh, being in seminary and going to daily mass, daily communion, daily adoration, meditation, the rosary, the spiritual formation, theological formation, it certainly wasn't bad for my soul. And I feel that it definitely has helped me to be a better man, and a better husband, and God willing, one day a better father.
No, that's great for all the listeners. This is one thing that James. I mean, we have a number of things in common, but this is something James and I have in common. We both spent many years in seminary. I was in seminary for 8 years, and I left shortly before diaconate ordination as well. It's a different kind of story, but that was definitely one thing that was a source of rapport between us. And yes, I mean, we could both attest that if you anyone here listening senses are you thinking about going to seminary? I mean, it can only be good for you to at least consider, because you'll either be the priest of your parish or you'll be the priest of your family, right? If you get married and have children. But all of us are baptized priest, prophet, and king, and so we have to be able to sacrifice and we have to be able to worship, and and it'll give you the tools for sainthood for sure. Just kind of shifting now. So at some point you started Catholic Intimacy, um, and I'd love to hear how that came about. And I'd also love to hear, how you discovered this passion for marriage, for coaching other couples. So how did all that come to be? Tell us about the next stage.
So definitely was not something I foresaw. Like I said, my thesis was in a sacramental topic. My specialty in my uh, chosen theological studies was sacramental theology. But I did, of course, have a formation in moral theology, and we even did the course on like how to hear confession, things like that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And as a newlywed, it would come up of like, can you do X, Y, or Z? You know, basic like, and just sometimes just curiosity. Can you have intercourse during the menstrual period? Pretty sure every young couple has asked that. Um, and it's like, oh, easy peasy. I'm gonna pull out Tanqueray, or I'm gonna pull out some other author, and I read Latin, I read French, so it's pretty easy to either pull out my notes from class, which were in French, or one of the manuals, and say, oh, they literally pretty much any topic we could think of, somebody's written on.
Hmm.
Though a lot of that's not easily accessible. And what we realized was, for us, asking those questions was really easy. For our friends, not so much. Now, and a lot of our friends knew that I had formation in theology, so they discreetly come and ask, like, hey, by the way, do you know what the church teaches on this? I can't find anything. Like, oh, yeah, well, let me go research and find out. And, my wife, Megan, is a licensed clinical social worker. So she specializes in trauma therapy and military social work, has her practice screaming at trees counseling. And so she very much has a heart for service, and that clinical aspect. Has worked with a lot of people in all sorts of situations. A lot worked as a case manager for families, doing sort of family work to help families where they're struggling because their child is in the system and they're trying to get their child out of the systems, kind of having to do, um, even before she was licensed, as just in an intern level, working with families to how do we build your relationship? How do we get your marriage on track so that you can be a good couple to then be good parents? Um, and so actually one evening we were having one of our 3-hour conversations. For us, it always turns out when we get deep into something, it inevitably lasts 3 hours. Um, and so it was late when I were talking about these issues and the problems we saw. And she was like, well, we should do something. We should just start something. I have all this clinical knowledge, you have this theological knowledge. Why don't we start something and make it very clearly Catholic so that people know like you can trust this for Catholic resources? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like great. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, what's our focus gonna be? How are we gonna brand this? And in the course of those 3 hours of talking through it, we came up with the name Catholic Intimacy. We bought a domain, and we decided on a mission statement. And so we launched. A few weeks later, I went ahead and set up a website on Squarespace, and we started with the blog post. Um, Now, part of that was we figured we had to make some money. So we were trying to figure out how to brainstorm, and we've tried all sorts of things through the year. But the thing that really stuck as far as trying to pay for this project was the coaching, because very quickly, um, as I was putting out these theological articles, people started reaching out and saying, "Hey, can you help us individually?" And of course, my original intent was just to write articles. She would, if people came to her for therapy, that'd be a different story. Um, but they were like, we need coaching. And so that's when I realized like I can do counsel, like I can do consulting on moral issues, but I'm not trained as a coach. So that's when I went and got formal training from Catholic Life coaches, from Rick Erasmus with Redevive Coaching. And then I started the marriage and family therapy program that I'm currently working on at Capella, to give me that formation on how do I present this to somebody, so that they can understand these things. Not just I can answer a theological question, but how can you apply this in your marriage? And that education I've furthered with Sexual Health Alliance, where I'm currently studying for certification as a sex therapist. And then I've also been certified with the American Board of Sexology. Even before finishing any of these programs, their board of directors found CatholicIntimacy.com and recognized that I was already a peer in the field. And they just said, here's full certification. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. But the irony of it is most people think this was my idea and actually it was Megan's. Uh,
Mm.
the whole shebang was originally her idea, and I was like, okay, we can do that.
Wow, now here you are, and wow, that's amazing. And now, so it was Catholic Intimacy for a little while, and you made this shift now where the Apostolate for Marital Intimacy. A few things happened in between. You've had some things get you various high points of attention at various times, maybe even a little controversy, so to speak. I'm sure that's all been. I know that's all been fun. But not personal, maybe just people disagreeing with you theologically more. But we know that anyone who they just have a way of making it loud. Um, Also, I mean, you grew the staff. It went from being you and Megan now to being me and several other of us. So, talk a little bit about those things.
So yeah, so I mean, like I said, we started off with those articles, and my goal from the get-go was to address the things that either you couldn't find any resources on online, or what was out there was garbage.
Hmm.
Um, and one in particular was the writings of Ron Conte Jr. He has several websites, particularly like catechism.cc,
Hmm.
sites where people come across and think, oh, this must be the church teaching of the
The
church.
Catechism of the Catholic Church. Yeah.
Right. And
Yes.
and I had
I've seen it
that
posted
was
on various links as that. Yeah.
right. And that was one of the first questions I ever got, that well before Catholic Intimacy started, was some
Hmm.
friends said, oh, we read this thing on catechism.cc. What are your thoughts? I was like, what? That no, the church doesn't teach that. And but of course, I was trained in theology and philosophy for a decade. I don't just say yes or no. If I can avoid it, I'm going to go in
Right.
and say, where does the church teach this? What does
Hmm.
the church teach? And through a lot of these topics, the church hasn't formally spoken. These are things that are still within the scope of theologians to discuss and come up with their best arguments. And that's typically how the church operates until there is a real need to formally address something. And especially when we're dealing with things that are very much changing with time. Bioethics is kind of all over the place with the technologies
Hmm.
available. Um, the church will set a big principle, but then oftentimes is going to get down into the weeds of the specifics, right? And that's how
Right.
most moral
Yeah.
theology operates. There's a principle, and then it's up to the individual confessor, spiritual director, or advisor, or individual soul to how do we apply this in this concrete situation.
Hmm.
And
And
because
with
of that,
sexuality, you've seen a lot of like a lot of the saints have taken different takes on this. Many of that of which we no longer apply. That would be a podcast episode in itself, but just to add the point.
right?
So, Carrot, continue.
So for a good example of that would be St. Thomas on intercourse during the menstrual cycle. Well, people are like, oh, well, St. Thomas said it. Yes, but if you look at why did he say that, right? His logic is perfectly sound, but the minor of his premise is he received from the hard sciences of his day. And the hard science of his day said that intercourse, a child conceived during the menstrual cycle would be a monster, some either deformed, blind, lame, something like that. And so, of course, this is not aligned with the primary end of marriage of procreation, right? This would be to do harm to the child. So, of course, that would be immoral to knowingly do something that will cause harm to a child conceived. So that is logical, but then as Tanqueray points out, we know that's not the case.
Right.
So his logic is perfectly sound once you put in the right, correct science and know, okay, that's not what's happening here. Um, then we can recognize here's what the actual, teaching is. And even that the church has never formally espoused. Um, So again, this was all even in St. Thomas to now, it has always been in the realm of theologians to discuss and propose their solution because the church didn't feel a need to do so.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so those were the kind of questions I wanted to address and show. Here's what St. Thomas taught. Here's what other theologians have taught. Here's why we have this explanation. And one of the big ones that I wanted to address, because there is so much controversy online, is the question of the use of oral, anal, and toys. And to me, those are three topics that it's really hard to separate, especially when you start looking in the manual list. They are all very closely tied together. And so I did a very large article about 2 months after we got started, something I'd worked on for quite some time, and address those topics and explain there are different viewpoints on this, different kind of fields or schools of thought have different ideas on how to address this. But the church, you know, here's what the church has formally taught. But then again, how do we apply this in these particular situations? And, there's plenty of people that agree with me, plenty of theologians, current theologians, by and large agree with me on those topics. Some don't, and that is perfectly fine. Um, but again, if you recognize that this is an area where theologians can discuss and disagree, and it's okay. Um, well, plenty of your armchair theologians online did not agree with me and decided to voice their opinions quite loudly on social media, which I've never been a huge fan of social media. I'm not very good at it. Um, and so they had a heyday with it. It got us a lot of attention, which is just fine. It actually got us a lot of new clients and supporters. um, so
Yeah.
we
No, there's
we
not much bad attention in that regard, right? There's no bad advertising in some ways.
yes, at the time it was quite, oh my goodness, they're saying all sorts of horrible things about me, about Megan, about what we're doing. It was people were trying to get us kicked out of our parish, trying to get us excommunicated. It was quite a fiasco. And then after a moment of breathing and recognizing, like, wait a minute, the world is not burning down. We are not actually getting kicked out of anywhere. Uh, the vast majority of the church and of ecclesiastics and bishops included don't care what your average uh, Twitter account says, no matter how loud they may be on their little platform. Um, so we survived different things like that. Church Militant did an article on us, which was also not flattering. Um, we've gone through different ups and downs as an organization. Of course, being in the military does not make that easy because the Army will all of a sudden decide, hey, you're going to be gone for 3 months or 4 months or even a couple weeks. And when it was just two of us, because Megan has a full-time job with her practice, that meant everything shut down. And I couldn't see clients, no new articles, stuff like that. And we had a recent occasion of this where I had a very quick turnaround last minute, you're going to be gone for the next 3 weeks for a training. And again, everything had to come grinding to a halt. And I realized we can't keep doing this. This is not good for, our organization. It's not good for our clients and readers. Um, and that's when we started searching for somebody to join the team. And that's when we found Alexander John. Of course, is a very skilled theologian and is very knowledgeable. He's a walking encyclopedia of the
Check out his
manualist, of
articles.
the moralist, from, I mean, Liguori. He can cite more Liguori than any person I've ever met. And he's actually been a follower of ours since the beginning. Um, and he's become a friend over the years. And he and I were talked on X many times long before we ever applied for the job. So I was very pleased to bring him on. As we were going through this growth period, realized we also needed to grow the website and improve it for user experience. So we brought on an IT guy, Parker Shanklin. We brought on Mary Brindy as our accountant, who then became our treasurer. Alexander has become our secretary for the board. Of course, we brought you on, and then we brought on several coaches. So we have um, Dr. Bridget Anderson, who is a naturopathic doctor who specializes in reproductive health. We have Dr. Amanda Ramirez, who is a physical therapist who specializes in pelvic health and fertility. We have Kay Metzler, who is a marriage and family therapist. We also have Caroline, I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm not going to say it, who is a NFP coach. Uh, of course, you have volunteered to be there for accountability partner for primarily for men, but every now and then you'll get a female that wants to. Wow, that's my army speak. A lady that wants to uh, get some help in that regard, since it unfortunately is growing in the amongst women as well. Um, and then Alexander is there for theological consultations, available both to the clergy and the laity. And I've continued with the intimacy coaching. So our team has grown quite a bit. And as it was growing, um, things were looking really bright, getting this fantastic team. And I was excited because something I've desired the entire way through this process as I've worked with so many couples is realizing I can't do it all. I'm not an NFP coach. I'm not a medical provider. There's so many I can help with this little area, but really their problem covers multiple domains. And so being able to bring in a team that can actually cover that holistically was something I dreamed about for years. And Megan and I had talked about many times, but it kind of was like something way down the road. And saw this opportunity as like, hey, let's go for it. Let's see if we can get these people on board. And did. And then it's like, okay, the next big step is to switch from where we were hosting our website, Squarespace, to Learn Worlds, which is a much better platform for providing our courses. And which over about 6 weeks, 2 months, Parker actually had totally redesigned and rebuilt the old website on this new platform. So on June 1st, we launched it on the new platform, and we went from hundreds of views on the site a day to tens, where Google, our SEO ranking just died. Kind of like, okay, to be expected, Google has to rediscover us. Um, but we went from being on the first page for really, if you searched anything with Catholic intimacy, Catholic sexuality, what is permitted in marriage, we were probably on the first page, if not the first.
As a note for everyone, that's how I found you guys.
Yeah,
That
there you
article
go.
that you mentioned about manual and oral stimulation, all that was the first article of yours I read, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I was probably a reader of yours for a couple of years before joining the team.
There you
But
go.
anyways, just so I mean, so the SEO at the time was excellent, but the new website's fantastic. Unfortunately, as you were saying, the SEO is not so good. Anyways, carry on.
So we dropped, it's like, okay, that's to be expected. We'll regain. We still have all this solid content. Plus, Alexander was kicking out new, very high quality articles. I had some new articles come out this summer. Um, it's like, okay, it's not going to be a big deal. We'll regain it and we will be off to the races. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. Um, our SEO is still pretty poor. Um, get lots of clicks. When somebody finds us, they click as a tendency. Um, but it's do they even see our site come up. And well, of course, that affected our cash flow as an organization. We went from several $1,000s of revenue per month, well, of cash flow. Um, Pretty much all of our, even when this was an LLC, we put pretty much everything right back into the organization, trying to grow it and expand our capabilities. Um, but once that happened, then we started having to pay everything out of Megan's therapy practice. So for the last almost 3 months now, all of the revenue from her therapy practice has been put into the organization. And then we've, as a couple, have just lived off of my military pay. Um, Definitely not something we knew we could sustain. But we're like, okay, such is life. We'll trudge through this. We've gotten through a lot. Um, come July, like, okay, this is still very much a problem. Um, and something Catholic intimacy was always a ministry for us. It was always something to give to the church. But we also knew it needed to pay for itself, because otherwise it's a hobby and hobbies last only as long as they're fun. And this is a lot of work.
Of
It's a
course.
lot of work.
Yes, it
I
is.
mean, on top of, working a caseload for the Army, then I have 25 hours a week doing this. Um,
We're
plus,
all part-time here.
yeah,
You-
right. Everyone's part-time. So, it's always been a lot of work. But especially now it's a lot of work that I'm volunteering plus putting, um, her entire paycheck into this. It wasn't sustainable. It's like, okay, I think this is God telling us, hey, it's time for the next step. Because we'd always thought about wanting to do a nonprofit, but you can't have a nonprofit with two people, especially not a married couple. So we're like, okay, let's see if the team would be interested in making this jump. And so we asked Alexander and Mary if they would be interested in forming the board of directors, and they were very enthusiastic. Yes, we believe in this. We love this ministry. We want to see this thrive and succeed. Um, and that also was a step we realized years ago that we would need to take to get, formal approbation from the church. We still, even when as Catholic intimacy, we've informed our ecclesiastical superiors of this. They're aware, but they have declined to give formal approbation. They also didn't tell us we had to change the name because we did ask that specifically, and they just said, just keep doing it. Um, but we wanted to have that formal approbation so we can expand our reach, our work with dioceses. Currently, we only have a formal partnership with one diocese that's down in Australia, their military archdiocese down there, because they invited us. But in order to grow that reach and that opportunity to work with dioceses and parishes, we knew that we needed to have the formal approbation, and being a nonprofit is one of those steps. So we realized we needed to make. Um, so now that we had the personnel to be able to do that, said, okay, is this time? Everyone agreed, yes, it is. Let's do it. And we wanted to change the name to make it clear what is our purpose. What are we? We're an apostolate, so this is a lay apostolate um, for marital intimacy, right? So the domain has stayed the same, Catholic Intimacy, except for it's now a .org. So it's catholicintimacy.org. Much like you'll see the Pastoral Solutions Institute, which is Dr. Potchak's organization. It's catholiccounselors.com. Catholic Answers is catholic.com. So the name has changed, and the mission has been refined a bit too, in that, we're looking at spreading out over multiple domains. We already had courses that I was doing, we had articles, we had coaching. But we want to expand this where it's not just me that's producing things. We want it to be a team effort to produce new courses, because ultimately we want to be able to provide marriage prep courses. A lot of what's out there is insufficient, and we want to be able to really meet the need that's lacking in the church. Because so many people that they're going to get one weekend, maybe a day of, the pre-Cana, and it's sadly insufficient. But the church requires 6 months. Why don't we use that time effectively to teach them what they need to know so that when they get married, it's not a horror of we didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't know to expect these things. Um, so there's a lot of things that we want to be able to provide. And I think that as a team, we're in a much better position to do that. So that's why we made that jump. Again, that jump was already always planned, um, but the necessity of the moment made it decided when it was going to happen. Um, that we need to make this jump so we could also start asking for donations. So people recognize, like, even though, yes, internally, Meg and I were making any profit off this for quite some time. Um, it's kind of hard to ask for donations when you're LLC because the assumption is you're making money. But now, as a nonprofit, hopefully people can start to understand that this is our gift to the church, is our desire, and can realize that it does require outside support to be able to keep this going. So,
Definitely. And the questions you guys write about are so relevant to the daily life of married couples. It's almost amazing that the church has not given more clarity. But well, I know we only have a few more minutes, so let's just be straight with everybody. We need to raise a certain amount, $2,500, by August 25th, which is the 3-year anniversary of the founding of Catholic Intimacy, or else we will be forced to shut down. So I know we only have a couple minutes left. So do you want to make one just end the episode with an appeal on
yes.
this?
For anybody that's watching this, first of all, thank you for watching so long. That definitely
Definitely.
helps with the YouTube analytics to help us regain that standing. Um, thank you for your participation in this work, even just by your presence, by listening. Um, we do have a mass offered, multiple masses every month offered for all of our readers, our clients, and our donors. Because realize that we have known this the whole time that this is God's work. The change that happens in marriages, and I've seen couples go from the brink of divorce to happily married. I've seen grandparents where their grandchildren were talking about the changes in their family as a whole because the grandparents had started working on their marriage. This work can have resonating effect throughout the church. And I really want to be able to continue it. I really pray that we're able to continue this ministry. And if you've gained anything from it, I really hope that you can find something, anything that you can donate to help this keep going. But regardless, be assured of our prayers, because ultimately we hope that this has served many couples and will continue to serve many couples. And if that can only be through prayer, then that's how it'll be.
Well, thanks for thank you for that, James. Thanks for everything you've done to start this ministry. The amazing contribution you've made, all the couples you've coached through all this. You've really made an impact on the church, regardless of what happens. When August 25th comes. But we implore you, dear listeners, to please help us. So, thanks for your time today, James. Thanks for a great conversation. We look forward to having you back on an episode in the future, God willing. And so, if it is God's will, we hope to keep this going and see you soon. Please donate using the link that'll be provided below. Also, please like and subscribe and share this with more people. We really need your donations to keep helping marriages in the church. So, James Walther, once again, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast for the Apostolate for Marital Intimacy. My name is Theo McManigal. Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever.